Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour, US President Joe Biden launches Ukraine compact to address Kyiv's immediate defense and security needs. The first Israeli military report on October 7 attack finds army failed to protect civilians. More than 100 people were killed in the attack on Be'eri, a community. Japan warns of rising tensions over China's military drills near Taiwan. And in tennis, 7th-seed Jasmine Paolini becomes the first Italian woman to reach a Wimbledon final after beating Donna Vekic to take on Barbara Krejcikova in the summit clash. The three-day NATO summit in Washington, D.C. concluded on the 11th of July with the launch of the Ukraine Compact, a security framework signed by 32 allies. The newly announced Ukraine Compact builds upon the joint G7 declaration made at last year's NATO summit in Vilnius. The Compact states that members will support Ukraine together in a unified, coordinated and comprehensive architecture, and more importantly, not just for now, but for years in the future. Let me quickly tell you how exactly are the countries planning to help Ukraine. In the short term, the 32 allies of Ukraine will continue to supply the weapons and munitions and training they need to repel Russian forces. In the medium term, they will help build a future force that has the strength and the capabilities both to defend Ukraine and deter further aggression. In the long term, after this conflict is over, if Putin ever tries it again, all the countries that endorse the compact have pledged to support Ukraine. Addressing the leaders, Biden reiterated that the Ukraine compact takes the relations with Ukraine to a whole new level, a significant achievement for Ukraine and all of us, for which Zelenskyy expressed gratitude.
This compact brings all those countries together in a unified, coordinated, and comprehensive architecture to support Ukraine, not just for now, but for years in the future.
Ukraine compact we are forming takes our relations to a new level, a significant achievement for Ukraine and all of us.
President Biden further said that he has no reason to talk to Russian President Vladimir Putin right now unless he changes his behavior. Biden vowed that the United States cannot retreat from the world and said under his leadership, Washington will not walk away from support for Ukraine.
I'm dealing with Xi right now and direct contact with him. I have no good reason to talk to Putin right now. There's not much that he is prepared to do in terms of accommodating any change in his behavior.
In all, the NATO summit wrapped up in Washington with billions of dollars more in aid for Ukraine and major support on air defenses. At the same time, challenges to US President Biden's leadership overshadowed the end of the meetings. DD India's Caroline Malone reports from Washington.
Joe Biden, president of the NATO summit's host nation, had the final word on Thursday, describing the alliance as of critical importance to the US and transatlantic security. NATO allies focused on supporting Ukraine at this meeting, defending the country from Russia and China, who they say supplies infrastructure and tech support to the Kremlin. The Secretary-General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, said that the message from the alliance is clear about China's responsibility when it comes to enabling Russia's war. Ukraine and the threats posed by Russia and China are of increasing concern to NATO's Indo-Pacific partners, who see it as an existential threat to the region. The groupings are pushing back with investment in defence and against cyber attacks and misinformation. Well, as for Ukraine, there are F-16 fighter jets on the way and more air defence systems from the US. NATO will station a civilian representative in Kyiv going forward and move a command post to Germany, where they will coordinate the supply of weapons to Ukraine. The US is also sending cruise missiles to Germany for NATO defence. Well, at the end of the summit, Hungary's Prime Minister, who's just back from trips to Russia, Ukraine and China, decided to go to Florida to meet with Donald Trump, the Republicans' presumptive presidential nominee. Trump has claimed he can end the war in 24 hours, a claim that President Biden and other NATO leaders have pushed back on. Well, Ukraine would need the Russians to leave their territory before any chance of peace talks. Well, all of this, though, is happening at tumultuous times for President Biden, who's being challenged by even members of his own party who are concerned over his age and lack of mental sharpness, with some even calling for him not to run again in this year's election. That's despite a successful NATO summit in the United States. Caroline Malone in Washington reporting for DD India.
For its part, China says it will never accept the unfounded accusations made against it at the NATO summit, that too over a phone call. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi dialed his Dutch counterpart to reply the message. Wang said China is willing to maintain contact with NATO on an equal footing and conduct exchanges on the basis of mutual respect, asking the military alliance to neither interfere with its internal affairs nor challenge its interests. He then said that China and NATO countries have different political systems and values, but this should not be a reason for NATO to instigate confrontation with China. It continues unabatedly. Verbal gaffes are beginning to become a regular and intensely scrutinized feature of U.S. President Joe Biden's speeches and press interactions. As calls within party grow for him to step aside from presidential race, Biden remains steadfast and firm. But the list is growing of those who are at unease with his continued candidacy.
Hey, buddy.
US President Joe Biden had a series of verbal slip-ups on Thursday alongside the NATO summit in Washington, an unfortunate development for the 81-year-old as he tries to move past concerns that he is too old to run for re-election. Biden mistakenly referred to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy as President Putin. As the comment drew gasps from those in the room, Biden corrected himself quickly.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. We're going to beat President Putin. President Zelenskyy. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
During a news conference on Thursday evening, responding to a question about his confidence in Kamala Harris, Biden mixed up the names of Harris and his rival Trump.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president.
Biden also struggled at the news conference to find the words chiefs of staff, mistakenly referring to the group of the country's top uniformed military leaders as commander-in-chief, the title he holds as president.
And so our military is working. I'm following the advice of my commander-in-chief, the chief of staff of the military, as well as the Secretary of Defense and our intelligence people.
Verbal gaffes are not unusual in the long political career of Biden, who overcame a childhood stutter. But there is closer attention on him amid the fallout from his dismal debate performance against Republican candidate Donald Trump last month. And with each word that is misspelled or every name that he exchanges, the chorus for him to withdraw is growing stronger. The list of dissidents in the party is steadily growing long. After the press conference, Democratic Congressman Jim Himes and Democratic U.S. Representative Eric Sorensen asked Biden to step aside from presidential race. Bureau Report, DD India.
The world questions the capability of US President Joe Biden after he participated in the most high-stakes news conference of his political career. The question also looms that will the voters out there, swayed by his arguments, vote for him, or do they feel that he does not stand a chance of serving another full term in office of 4 years if he were to be re-elected? DD India's Nick Harper has more from Washington.
There was plenty of scrutiny on him, as there has been mounting calls within his own party for him to suspend his re-election bid. So here he was on the final day of the NATO summit giving an hour-long press conference. Well, Biden says he's determined, he's staying in. That has been his mantra throughout. Various other pundits, even celebrities like the actor George Clooney, have all said it is time to step aside. I think what might be interesting to note over the coming days, apart from the likelihood of an increased number of defections within the Democratic Party, all of them telling Biden to step aside, is polling that will come out in the coming days, which will reflect how he did during the course of that press conference. Were voters out there swayed by his arguments, by his fitness, his vigour, his vitality, or do they feel that he
Still to come on DD India News Hour. Ukraine urges NATO to lift restrictions on targeting Russia. The United Nations urges Russia to withdraw from Europe's largest nuclear power plant in Ukraine. And Taiwan monitors Chinese military surge, calls China a threat to stability.
India keeps getting hotter and hotter, people will be looking for innovations to help combat the impacts of climate change and to cut the emissions that are causing it.
Zero tillage wheat, it builds soil carbon. It removes carbon dioxide from the air and builds soil carbon. It's like planting a tree underground.
What's happening here is preservation through conversion and transformation. I think you can see that very well here. You can take good experiences from it, and those are transferable.
Perovskite over silicon, as mature, is the ease of processing. Silicon is something that is relatively energy intensive to fabricate, but this is something that can be done at close to room temperatures.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy spoke with NATO leaders on the sidelines of the annual meeting in Washington on Thursday. As the alliance solidified additional support for the conflict-struck nation, Zelenskyy said Ukraine was very close to achieving its goal of NATO membership. NATO members issued a declaration in support of Ukraine, promising additional aid and pledging to support its irreversible path to NATO membership.
At this summit, we are putting in place the foundations for Ukraine to prevail, to defend today and deter tomorrow. Yesterday, NATO allies adopted a robust package of practical support for Ukraine, including a pledge of long-term security assistance. Today, we will take further decisions together with Ukraine, making clear that NATO support is built to last, and affirming that Ukraine's future is in NATO.
President Zelenskyy urged the allies to lift all restrictions on Kyiv conducting long-range strikes on targets inside Russia during a joint news conference with NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg. Zelenskyy said that if they wanted Ukraine to win, then lift all limitations.
We, of course, if we want to win, if we want to prevail, if we want to save our country and to defend it, we need to lift all the limitations. I spoke about it with partners, with UK leader, with United States President, with Secretary, all of them. And I will rise up this topic with very concrete facts.
And Megumi Lim joins us from Kyiv. Megumi, would Ukraine be satisfied with the outcomes from the NATO summit? Did Zelenskyy achieve some, if not all, of his objectives?
Well, there's a lot that came out of this NATO summit this week, where obviously Ukraine was at the top of the agenda, and President Zelenskyy did receive a lot of good news that Ukraine will be receiving more missiles, more combat vehicles, more ammunition, and also more air defense systems. NATO members also said that the first batch of F-16 jets are already on their way to Ukraine, which is good news, and they also promised $43 billion worth of support for the year 2025. So a lot of good news there, but not just President Zelenskyy, but also NATO officials are saying that these pledges still fall short of allowing Ukraine to mount a major counteroffensive this year or to even retake any territory. NATO officials said that many of these newly committed weapons have not been purchased yet or even built yet, and as we know, many of these weapons deliveries take weeks, if not months, to arrive and get to Ukrainian front line. So it is looking like Ukraine will still be maintaining a defensive posture for at least the next 6 months. And in terms of air defense systems, President Zelenskyy has been asking for 7 more Patriot batteries, but unfortunately, NATO members have only been able to promise 3 more Patriot batteries. And as we saw earlier this week, the devastating missile attack against the Children's Hospital in central Kyiv, which is the most protected area of Ukraine, and even then a cruise missile was able to break through air defense systems and cause this devastating strike. So indeed, a lot of good news, but President Zelenskyy is still asking for more. And of course, at the top of the wish list is an official invitation to join NATO. This is something that was made clear will not happen this time round. But a statement was issued that Ukraine's path to NATO is something that is irreversible, and that is the farthest extent of what NATO could promise this time round at this summit.
Now, China seems to have come into the focus as well during the summit, along with Zelenskyy's continued pleas to lift restrictions on using Western-supplied weapons against Russia. Tell us more.
Yeah, that's right. Russia was not the only focus at the summit. China came into focus as well. There was a declaration that was agreed by 32 NATO leaders saying that China has been providing and supplying Russia with weapons components. And that China, it was basically an implicit threat that if China continues to do so, and China's growing support for Russia will come at a cost for Beijing. Now, this statement didn't specify what that cost would look like, but it is likely going to look like sanctions, the imposition of sanctions against China. Now, in terms of lifting restrictions on the use of Western-supplied weapons by Ukrainian troops to strike at military targets deeper inside Russia, this has been a prevailing plea by President Zelenskyy. Now, some restrictions were lifted recently, but only for certain weapons and only against certain Russian regions that are close to Ukraine's Kharkiv region. Now, Zelenskyy did say that this recent policy change did help Ukrainian troops fend off a major Russian advance in Ukraine's northeast, but he is saying that all restrictions need to be lifted in order to even think of a possible Ukrainian victory. He wants Ukrainian troops to be able to target Russian air bases that house jets that are responsible for these devastating missile and bomb attacks against Ukrainian cities and also Ukrainian frontline positions. He also wants to be able to target crucial Russian supply lines that have fueled this war effort. So indeed, this is going to be a prevailing plea by President Zelenskyy.
Megumi, thank you. Appreciate it. Megumi Lim reporting there from Kyiv in Ukraine. Let's now get you an update on the ground situation. Ukraine's Air Force shot down all 5 Kh-101 cruise missiles and 11 out of 19 drones launched by Russia. Russia's main target was the town, which is an important Ukrainian airbase and a frequent target of Moscow's strikes. However, there was no information on casualties or damage. The United Nations General Assembly on Thursday demanded Russia to urgently withdraw its military and other unauthorized personnel from Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The 193-member General Assembly adopted a resolution with 99 votes in favor, 9 against and 60 abstentions. The Zaporizhzhia plant, the largest in Europe, was captured by Russia shortly after it launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. The Israeli army failed to protect civilians during the October 7th Hamas attack, the military said in the findings of a first probe into its own security failings. The army acknowledged that had not protected the citizens of one of the worst-hit communities, Kibbutz Be'eri. More than 100 people were killed in the attack on Be'eri and 32 taken hostage to Gaza, 11 of whom are still there. The Israeli military said it was unprepared for the massive infiltration by Hamas. Meanwhile, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has said that the country's top leaders, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, should be investigated for the October 7 failure.
It must investigate me, the Defense Minister. It must investigate the Prime Minister. It must investigate the military chief as well as the head of the security services. It must investigate the Israeli Defense Forces and the other subordinates who report to the government.
An Israeli negotiation team will head to Cairo to hold further talks aimed at securing a ceasefire in Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel has said that it struck a military post in Syria in retaliation after a projectile was fired from Syria into the Golan Heights. Earlier, an Israeli soldier was killed in combat near the border with Lebanon. According to a report, Israeli and Egyptian ceasefire negotiators are in talks about an electronic surveillance system along the border between Gaza and Egypt that could allow Israel to pull back its troops from the area if a ceasefire is agreed upon. Both Hamas and Egypt are opposed to Israel keeping its forces there. Israel is worried that if its troops leave the border zone, Hamas could smuggle in weapons and supplies from Egypt into Gaza. U.S. President Joe Biden has said that the Israel-Gaza conflict must end now, telling reporters that his Gaza ceasefire framework had been agreed on by both Israel and Palestinian Islamist group Hamas, but added that there were still gaps to close.
The United States has been working to secure a ceasefire in Gaza, to bring the hostages home, to create a path for peace and stability in the Middle East. 6 weeks ago, I laid out a detailed plan in writing. It was endorsed by the UN Security Council, the G7. That framework is now agreed on by both Israel and Hamas. So I sent my team to the region to hammer out the details. These are difficult, complex issues. There's still gaps to close, but we're making progress. The trend is positive, and I'm determined to get this deal done and bring an end to this war, which should end now.
In a hush money case, Donald Trump's lawyer has urged judges to toss out his conviction because of the U.S. Supreme Court ruling that presidents have at least some immunity from criminal charges, setting up a fresh fight with Manhattan prosecutors as his campaign to take back the White House heats up. In a court filing dated 10th July made public on Thursday, defense lawyers said the May 30th guilty verdict in the first ever criminal trial of a U.S. president should be set aside following the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity. Justice Juan Merchan this month delayed Trump's sentencing by 2 months after defense lawyers said the justice's 1st July ruling that presidents cannot face criminal charges over official acts meant prosecutors should not have shown evidence from Trump's time in the White House at trial. Hungary's far-right leader and Prime Minister Viktor Orban met U.S. former President Trump in Florida on Thursday. Both leaders discussed the possibilities of peace and ceasefire in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Orban has visited Kyiv, Moscow and Beijing in the past 2 weeks on a self-styled peace mission. The meeting was in limelight as the U.S. is heading towards its presidential election. Trump has earlier claimed repeatedly that he could end the conflict in one day if he is elected president again. Meanwhile, advisors to the former president are reported to have presented him with a plan to end the conflict by, in part, making future U.S. aid to Kyiv conditional on Ukraine joining the peace talks. Shifting focus to the Indo-Pacific now, China's defense ministry on Friday urged the Philippines side to immediately withdraw personnel and ships illegally stationed at Sabina Shoal on the Spratly archipelago and stop heading down the wrong path. China's defense ministry also says that Chinese aircraft carrier Shandong's recent far sea combat training is a routine annual arrangement, and the Navy will hold similar exercises routinely to improve the combat ability of the carrier group. Defense spokesperson made the comments in a statement from the ministry, adding such drills do not have any specific targets. Meanwhile, Philippines officials have said that they reject the use of force to undermine its interests in the contested South China Sea, but it does not want any conflict and has agreed with China to ease tensions in a contested shoal. National Security Advisor Eduardo Ano said efforts were underway to de-escalate tensions in the disputed waterway, where Manila and Beijing have accused each other of aggressive behavior involving their ships and of damaging the marine environment. Japan has warned that China risked escalating tension with Taiwan with an increase in military exercises that appeared aimed in part at readying Beijing's forces for a possible invasion of the democratically governed island. Japan's annual assessment of security threats, including those posed by neighbors China, North Korea and Russia, comes as Taiwan closely monitors Chinese air and sea exercises, including one with an aircraft carrier in the nearby Pacific. Japan's 548-page assessment also exposed China's plans to double its nuclear arsenal to more than 1,000 warheads by 2030. Take a look at what else is making news around the world. Severe flooding in a residential neighborhood in Japan was captured after heavy rains hit the western region. Japan's weather agency warned of heavy rain in the country's west and cautioned people to be on high alert for landslides and flooding, local media reported. Orange-colored skies were witnessed due to a wildfire that burned at least 1,093 hectares of land in Southern California. According to the U.S. Forest Service, 479 firefighters have been deployed to fight the Vista fire, which as of Thursday was 0% contained. PTT Oil and Retail Business and Thai Vietjet Air launched their first flight using sustainable aviation fuel on the Bangkok-Da Nang route from Suvarnabhumi Airport. The SAF is produced from used cooking oil and has similar properties to conventional jet fuel, allowing it to be blended without engine modifications. This initiative aims to reduce carbon emissions in the aviation industry. Still to come on DD India News Hour. Nepal's Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal seeks trust vote. And India's first semi-automated deep-water transshipment port, Vizhinjam International Seaport in Kerala, inaugurated.
What is happening to the link between the diaspora and Mother India, how they see India's rise, and what is the role of the diaspora in propelling India's rise?
See, being here firsthand, all the infrastructural changes, the talks about transformation, I feel very proud.
As a member of the diaspora, we think that India is a country that is rich in culture, and at the same time its economic advancements and technology.
To bring this knowledge to the people there and to stimulate people on building relationships with each other and with India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. A quick recap of the headlines. US President Joe Biden launches Ukraine compact to address Kiev's immediate defense and security needs. The first Israeli military report on October 7 attack finds army failed to protect civilians. More than 100 people were killed in the attack on Bay Area, a community. Japan warns of rising tensions over China's military drills near Taiwan. And in tennis, 7th seed Jasmine Paolini becomes the first Italian woman to reach a Wimbledon final after defeating Donna Vekic to take on Barbara Krejcikova in the summit clash. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi met the BIMSTEC foreign ministers in New Delhi on Friday. The leaders discussed ways to strengthen regional cooperation, including connectivity, energy, trade, health, agriculture, science, security, and people-to-people exchanges. Prime Minister Modi also conveyed full support to Thailand for a successful BIMSTEC summit later this year. Now, India began hosting foreign ministers from the BIMSTEC member countries for a two-day retreat in the national capital on Thursday, aimed at bolstering cooperation among the Bay of Bengal countries. The Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation brings together 7 countries of South and Southeast Asia for multifaceted cooperation. India's Ministry of External Affairs earlier said the retreat presents an opportunity for the group to discuss avenues to deepen cooperation in trade and connectivity. Nepal Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal Prachand is facing his 5th round of vote of confidence motion on Friday. The former Maoist leader, who entered mainstream politics after political change in 2006, is taking his 5th vote of confidence in less than 20 months in power. Addressing the House of Representatives while seeking a vote of confidence, Prime Minister Dahal urged not to take the country towards unnecessary conflict by deceiving in the name of amendment of the Constitution by defying the agreement. The chances of Dahal losing his Prime Minister's post reached an all-time high after CPN-UML, the largest coalition partner, withdrew its support on the 3rd of July. Right, so we'll get you the latest from our correspondent on the ground. News coming in that Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal is seeking a vote of confidence in the national legislature. All right, joining me is DD India's Shweta Singh from Kathmandu. Tell us more about the trust vote and how do the numbers stack up in the country's legislature insofar as the government and the opposition are concerned?
Now, actually, there is ongoing discussion in House of Representatives. So already Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal spoke and he was attacking on CPN, UML and Nepali Congress. That when they are coming together, it is not going to bring any stability to Nepal, or the amendment what they are planning bring in Constitution is not worthy because people will not support that. So he was having his views in the parliament, and then after him, already 2 of House of Representatives, and there obviously because the Nepali Congress and CPN UML are determined to come together. And
right, apologies for that irregular audio link with Shweta Singh in Kathmandu. We'll leave it there for now and come back to her for more if time permits. Right, moving on, Kerala Chief Minister and Union Minister Sarbananda Sonowal formally inaugurated India's first semi-automated deep-water transshipment port, Vizhinjam International Seaport, on Friday. The port welcomed its first mothership from China.
India's maritime landscape is set for a revolutionary change as country's first transshipment terminal and semi-automated deep-water port, Vizhinjam International Seaport, was formally inaugurated by the Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan and Union Minister of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, Sarbananda Sonowal, on Friday. Union Minister Sonowal expressed confidence that the port will offer steep competition to the existing transshipment hubs at Colombo and Singapore.
I am sure that the port's capability to service mega-sized container vessels with other associated services that it offers, Vizhinjam Port will offer steep competition to the existing transshipment hub at Colombo and Singapore. That this port, being a greenfield project, will use the best of the energy-efficient technologies and intelligent smart port system that would create an operational efficiency and green port benchmark for other ports to follow.
On Thursday morning, MV San Fernando, the first mothership carrying 2,000 containers, arrived at the port from Xiamen, China. This significant event marks the beginning of a new era in India's port operations. Vizhinjam International Seaport, built at a cost of $910 million, is owned by the Kerala government and is expected to be fully commissioned by September or October this year, with an initial capability to handle 10 lakh containers per year. Upon full commissioning, it will be able to manage 2 motherships simultaneously. Vizhinjam International Seaport heralds a new chapter in India's maritime capabilities, promising significant economic and logistical benefits. With inputs from Ajay Roy, Kirat Chawla for DD India.
And now to some weather updates. India's Meteorological Department has predicted increased rainfall activity in northern and northeastern India, including eastern Uttar Pradesh, Delhi, NCR and other regions in the coming days. The weather body has further issued an orange alert for heavy rainfall for Bihar and parts of Uttar Pradesh. The IMD indicated that the intensity of rainfall in Delhi is expected to increase in the coming days. Warnings have been issued due to expected heavy rainfall and rising water levels in the Yamuna River during the monsoon season. As per the forecast, rainfall activity will remain active across various states until the 15th of July. Heavy rainfall activity is expected over Himalayan West Bengal, Sikkim, Bihar, Jharkhand and Odisha. Also, the IMD has issued an orange alert indicating heavy to very heavy rainfall for Mumbai on Friday and Saturday. As per the weather department, a monsoon trough and a cyclonic circulation have also developed over Mumbai, which has resulted in strong westerly winds. The flood situation in a northeastern state of Assam has improved slightly due to reduced rainfall. No casualties were reported on Thursday, bringing the death toll to 83. Around 13.9 lakh people are still affected by the deluge. The water levels of Brahmaputra at some major points and tributaries are still flowing above the danger level. The famous Kaziranga National Park in Assam is facing its worst flood in the past 1 decade. That's already led to the death of 174 animals, including 10 prized one-horned rhinos. As heavy rainfall batters India's northern state of Uttarakhand, Badrinath National Highway has been blocked for more than 60 hours in the city of Joshimath. Stranded vehicles and pilgrims await clearance efforts as local residents and businesses step up with meals. Indian Army have also extended support by setting up langars for pilgrims. India's Aadhaar card has become a pivotal pillar in the nation's digital revolution. As the largest biometric identification system in the world, it has brought about significant changes in the way services are delivered to over 1 billion people. Here's more by our correspondent Dibyam Mondal on how Aadhaar is shaping the digital landscape in India.
2009, Aadhaar has transformed access to services across India. With over 1.3 billion Indians enrolled, Aadhaar provides a unique 12-digit identity number linked to an individual's biometric and demographic data. One of the key benefits of Aadhaar is its role in financial inclusion. By linking Aadhaar to bank accounts, the government has ensured that subsidies and benefits reach the intended recipients directly. The direct benefit transfer system has saved billions of dollars by eliminating middlemen and reducing fraud.
हमने आधार कार्ड को, आधार नंबर को सरकारी योजनाओं से जोड़ा। हमने ऐसी सारी बिचौलियों को बाहर किया, पैसा डायरेक्ट किया और अनुभव आया कि करोड़ों लोग ऐसे मिले हैं कि जो है ही नहीं, लेकिन रुपये जाते थे, अरबों खरबों रुपये जाते थे। अब वो तो बंद हुआ, पैसे बच गए, लेकिन हमने कहा जो जरूरतमंद बेचारे बाहर रह गए थे उनको ढूंढ ढूंढ करके लाओ और ये बचे हुए पैसे उनके खजाने में जाने चाहिए।
Aadhaar is also revolutionizing the way people interact with government services. From applying for passports to filing tax returns, Aadhaar has simplified and streamlined numerous processes. It is now a crucial element in the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, a financial inclusion program that has brought banking services to millions of unbanked citizens. The impact of Aadhaar extends beyond government services. Private companies are leveraging Aadhaar for KYC processes, making it easier for people to open bank accounts, get mobile connections, and even secure loans. This has boosted the digital economy and improved access to services. The seamless services revolutionizing the digitization in India has attracted praises even from abroad.
I learned a bunch about what India is doing on this issue of authentication. And I think it's really exciting because the government has to be involved, as they are, but they have this foundation with the Aadhaar system that means they can do things that most governments around the world can't do. And I think India, just as India did this for Aadhaar, I think for telephony and electronic authentication, I think India could really show the world how to do it right.
Looking ahead, the potential of Aadhaar is immense. As India continues to innovate, Aadhaar is set to play a crucial role in areas like digital health records and online education. Its robust and scalable architecture could also serve as model for other countries looking to implement similar systems. India's Aadhaar card is not just an identification tool, but a transformative force driving the nation towards a more inclusive and efficient digital future. Dibyendu Mondal's report for DD India.
And now take a look at what else is making news in India. India's Supreme Court granted an interim bail to Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal on Friday in a money laundering case by the Enforcement Directorate linked to the Delhi liquor policy. But Kejriwal will remain in Tihar jail in a case filed by the CBI. He was arrested by the ED on the 21st of March. The Fisheries Summer Meet 2024 is being held in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu. The event aimed to highlight the achievements of various programs and hold strategic discussions with states and union territories on the development of the fisheries sector. Voting for the Maharashtra Legislative Council election began on Friday. The biennial elections to 11 seats of the council will go on till 4 p.m. A total of 12 candidates are in the fray. The election comes just months ahead of the assembly election slated to take place in the state later this year. And still to come on DD India News Hour. India generates 4 times more jobs in the last decade between 2014 and 2023 than the preceding decade from 2004 to 2014.
India keeps getting hotter and hotter, people will be looking for innovations to help combat the impacts of climate change and to cut the emissions that are causing it.
Zero tillage wheat, it builds soil carbon. It removes carbon dioxide from the air and builds soil carbon. It's like planting a tree underground.
What's happening here is preservation through conversion and transformation. I think you can see that very well here. You can take good experiences from it, and those are transferable.
Perovskite over silicon, as mature, is the ease of processing. Silicon is something that is relatively energy intensive to fabricate, but this is something that can be done at close to room temperatures.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Imports of motorcycles from India to Nigeria went up in the first quarter of the year, making up more than half of the total imports. That's according to Nigeria's Bureau of Statistics. Economic experts say this is because the market for Indian brands is expanding. But there are calls for Nigeria to look at promoting local production also to preserve its foreign reserve. DD India's Ajak Mangut reports.
Innocent Onyoma runs this motorcycle dealership on the outskirts of Abuja. He says a good part of his stock consists of motorcycles from India, which are in high demand from customers due to some attractive features.
I got supply from China and India. These Bajaj, TVS or Hero motorcycle, they're all from India. Bajaj, the fuel consumption is very low and the maintenance is very low.
Nigeria has seen a rise in motorcycle imports over the last year. Authorities say imports surged over 200% in the first quarter of 2024 compared to 2023.
Figures from Nigeria's Bureau of Statistics shows that motorcycles worth over $70 million were imported into the country in the first quarter of 2024, with imports from India accounting for over 60% of the total imports.
Analysts say the significance of motorcycles in Nigeria's transport system and a growing market for Indian brands is responsible for the surge in imports.
Motorcycles have remained a major means of transportation in Nigeria, especially intracity transports. Even in major urban centers, you find that in the suburbs, the motorcycle businesses thrive more in those areas because of the terrain of the road and in most cases traffic.
But while these imports have boosted trade between Nigeria and India, analysts warn of an impact on Nigeria's foreign exchange reserves. They say foreign motorcycle manufacturers should be encouraged to set up in Nigeria while the government works to revive its steel industry to reduce importation. Analysts argue that steel, a major component needed for motorcycle production, would help in boosting Nigeria's local production.
The need for motorcycle in our transport system, for now, it cannot be overemphasized. So we need to, as a country, step up. We should do much more by doing another form of cooperation and actually manufacturing our own brands, for Nigerians as a first start, and then we can look at other African frontiers.
In May, Nigeria's government said it was in talks with investors as it seeks funding of $2 billion for its steel sector. But for now, riders and dealers like Innocent are making do with the imported brands. Ajak Mangut in Abuja, reporting for DD India.
A report published by State Bank of India shows that India has created 125 million jobs during FY14 to FY23. It was 4.3 times more than the preceding decadal period of FY04 to FY14, that was only 29 million. Additionally, the total employment reported by micro, small and medium enterprises registered with the MSME Ministry has crossed the 200 million mark. This according to data from the Udyam registration portal. The report also notes that better paid jobs are becoming available in the economy as the comparison of Employees Provident Fund Organization data with CLEMS data shows that in FY24, the share of EPFO jobs was 28%. The report also calculated that there has been a significant increase in employment in construction activities as the government's focus is on infrastructure sector. And now to news from the world of sport. Now, Barbara Krejcikova returned to a Grand Slam singles final 3 years after her only triumph with a stirring Wimbledon comeback on Thursday that set up a meeting with Italian Jasmine Paolini, who continued to break new ground at the All-England club. Meanwhile, 7th seed Paolini earlier became the first Italian woman to reach the final after overcoming Croatian Donna Vekic 2-6, 6-4, 7-6 in a thriller, continuing her extraordinary year after last month's French Open runner-up finish. India's cricket body, the BCCI, has announced the schedule for India's tour of Sri Lanka. The men in blue will tour the island nation and play a 3-match T20I series followed by a 3-match ODI series. The series will start on the 27th of July with a T20I game in Palagele and will conclude on the 7th of August in Colombo, which will host the 3rd ODI. But ahead of the series and in a major development in Sri Lanka cricket, the T20I skipper Vanindu Hasaranga announced his resignation from the captaincy role on Thursday. Now, this comes after the Sri Lankan team failed to reach the Super 8 stages of the ICC T20 World Cup 2024 with just one win in 4 games last month. The 26-year-old spin all-rounder took the captaincy reins from Dasun Shanaka only last year and captained Sri Lanka in just 10 T20I matches. Argentina's national soccer team, including its star player and captain Lionel Messi, were training in Miami, Florida on Thursday ahead of the Copa America 2024 match against Colombia. Messi returned to action last week in Argentina's quarterfinal win against Ecuador after missing the final group stage match due to injury. Argentina's preparation for the match against Colombia is crucial as it aims to secure a victory in the tournament. Argentina are tied with Uruguay on 15 Copa titles and will own the record outright if they beat Colombia at Miami Gardens at the Copa America final on Monday. Right, moving on, Lucknow Mango Festival or Mango Mahotsav kicked off in India's northern state of Uttar Pradesh on Friday. The 3-day festival was inaugurated by Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath. The Chief Minister also honored the farmers and praised the state's maximum mangoes export in the world. The exhibition will put up more than 700 mango species brought from several states like Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, Delhi, Haryana, Southern region and Maharashtra under one roof. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India News Up. You can get all the latest news and updates on the DD India mobile app. It's available on Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code on the screen to download it. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.